Hey there. Welcome to another episode of Carve Your Own Fucking Path, a podcast made to inspire you to create a life and business on your own terms. You'll hear candid interviews with people who have boldly decided to blaze their own trail, and the occasional solo show with me, your host. I'm Willa McDonough, on-camera coach, storyteller, and remote video producer. 5 years ago, I moved from my home base of San Francisco to the coast of Portugal, taking a big leap into the unknown. Some called it courageous. I called it carving my own fucking path. Today, I live in Lisbon and run a business that elevates your online presence, helping you show up confidently on camera to create videos that showcase your brand and personality so you can get more visibility and attract clients by being yourself. If you're just starting out in business or you've been doing it for a while, you're sure to pick up tidbits of actionable advice and hopefully feel inspired by stories from people who have chosen the unconventional and sometimes messy path. And if you've been waiting for a sign to start carving your own fucking path, this is it. I'm so happy you're here. So I'm very excited to announce that I'm chatting with Sara Duchovnay. Did I say that right?
You did.
Okay, good. And Sara is a professional opera singer who travels all over the US with her husband in an RV. I can't wait to hear about that. Who turned her obsession with antique diamonds and estate fine jewelry into a very profitable career, and who is responsible for the divorce ring phenomenon. And you're also an ambassador for the One Love Foundation, which teaches young people about healthy and unhealthy relationships, something that you know quite a bit about from what I've read about you. Okay. Welcome to the show.
Thanks so much. I'm really excited to talk about all of these topics.
All of the things. And okay, so being an opera singer I've never met an opera singer, I don't think.
Yeah. So being an opera singer is definitely a niche. But it's one of those things where, it's a small and very interconnected world. It's quite competitive, and kind of into that world, it feels like everyone's an opera singer, if that makes sense.
Yes.
It's like any industry where, once you get into that pond, you find that there are lots of wonderful people, lots of talented people in there with you. So, it's an unconventional lifestyle, and like any kind of freelance performing career, it has its ups and downs, and it definitely lacks stability. Lacks stability is what I would say.
Okay. And so whenever you were growing up, take us back to how do you become an opera singer?
I always loved performing. I was like one of those kids who would make my sister and her friends be in plays that I would direct and star in and choreograph. I mean, bless my sister. She was just such a patient person. I would make my family sit and watch ridiculously long and drawn out one-woman shows. So I always had that performer personality. And then I started singing in choirs and doing musicals. So I loved musical theater, and my dream was to be on Broadway, because when you're 12, or 15, and you're not like, I'm going to be an opera singer. So I dreamed of being on Broadway, and actually I had been exposed to opera at a very young age from my grandparents. Okay. So it was, so I knew about it. I enjoyed it. I loved the stories, but it wasn't something that I thought about doing for myself. It wasn't really on my radar in that way. But when I was 16, I wanted to take voice lessons, and I was so fortunate. I mean, it was one of those just luck things that my parents found a teacher in the area who was an opera singer. So, so I wanted to do musical theater, and I went to her and I was like, I want to be on Broadway. This is my dream. And after we had a lesson, she was like, listen, if you're going to have a career in music as a professional musician, I think your voice is more suited to opera and classical music.
At 12 years old?
No, I was 16. I was 16 at that point.
Okay.
Yes. So I had already, the female voice does change during puberty. It fills out and it matures a bit. So I had, passed that point. So my more mature voice was starting. Of course, then it keeps developing,
keeps
far into your 30s. But I had that just opera tone in a very raw, undeveloped form.
Okay.
So I sobbed and I was like devastated because I was like, my dream is to be on Broadway and she doesn't understand me. And like, this is not the plan that I have for myself. And then I went and I saw my first live opera. I saw Carmen. And I was just like, oh, this is so cool. This is what I'm going to do with my life. I never turned back.
I just got the chills. That's incredible. I mean, at that age, especially because at that age, you start to get input from other people. Did you ever hear, come on, you can't really do musical theater professionally, be on Broadway? I mean, did you have people, it sounds like you had a lot of support, but yes, the naysayers as well?
I had a very supportive family. My parents are both visual artists. So they really understood, the creative drive, and that if you need to do something like that with your life, you need to do it. Like that's,
Yeah.
So they did not want to crush any dreams. They were very, very supportive. But I went to a really high achieving public high school in the Philadelphia area, where, where you went to school really, really mattered. Like if it wasn't Ivy League, you had like failed your parents or whatever. So that was kind of the standard. And then I rolled in there and I was like, I'm going to go to a conservatory. Like, I'm going to go to school and I'm going to study opera. And I think there were just a lot of people who were like, is that a thing you could even do? It wasn't really the norm. Actually, my high school has turned out quite a few professional musicians, but it wasn't what people were used to hearing about. And of course, they all said like, well, are you going to Juilliard? So that was like the one thing they knew of, but yeah, it just wasn't really something that was like done very often.
So you made the decision at 16.
Yeah.
And you believed in yourself. So I do transformation coaching, and a lot of what I work on is the belief system, like limiting beliefs that start before you're 7 years old. Generally, we're just sponges soaking all this up. So that's where I'm, so interested in this, being so young, having big dreams, and then actually fulfilling them. So it sounds like you believed the entire time.
Yeah, I did. It's interesting because as performers, we all go through this up and down of like, I can do anything. And then the next second you're like, I'm the worst and everyone hates me and this is never going to happen, Right. So I definitely can't say that every moment, of my life or of my career has been like, I will do this because I deserve it and I'm the best. It's not like that at all. But I can't be any other way. Like this, being an opera singer is such, it's such a part of my soul and what drives me. So yeah, even during the really tough times, which of course, like there are many, many difficult times, but it's never been something that I could not do.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
Yeah. It sounds like it's a part of your identity.
Yeah.
From, from a long time ago. And then rejection, I'm sure you've been through many.
Oh, Absolutely.
Right.
And I always say, like rejection is actually the biggest part of our job
Is it?
as,
Oh, wow.
as performers.
Right. Okay. So
Yeah.
auditioning all the time.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So for anyone, I mean, most people have never really thought about this, but when you're a freelance musician, so a soloist, we don't belong to a company the way orchestras or choruses do. Soloists are all freelance, independent contractors. So for every job, every gig, every production that we get, we had to audition or submit for that role.
Okay.
And and then when it's done, you go on to the next one. Maybe there's no work lined up, I mean, you, and I think, for every job that you get, they were like 15, 20, 10 that you auditioned for and didn't get.
Wow. Yeah.
So yeah,
it's
we
the
get
life
rejected for
of
a
an
living.
artist. Yeah. And so nowadays, okay, so you're traveling across the country and your husband's also an opera singer.
Yes. My husband's a wonderful operatic tenor.
Okay.
So yeah, we live in an RV. We're in it right now.
Oh,
here it is.
Very cool. This is my dream.
Yeah,
for sure.
It's great. We love it. We've done it since 2017.
Okay. So the whole time.
Yeah.
In an RV. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Incredible.
And we have no other home. Like this is our home.
Okay.
And it is about 350 square feet. It has a washer and dryer. It has a queen size bed. Like we're very comfortable here. And we kind of came to this point because usually you stay in like a patron's home or an Airbnb or a hotel, for like 4 to 8 weeks, and you're living out of a suitcase.
Yeah.
And if you're a couple, then you're like, okay, I'm coming for this gig, but like my partner's coming with me. And, it's just, we wanted that like sense of home wherever we were. So,
right. And freedom.
Just drag our home with us and freedom. Yeah. We love it.
It's brilliant. It's awesome. So now during quarantine, so you've been, where are you now?
We are in Georgia right now. We're about an hour outside of Atlanta.
Okay.
And we are in a camper, and my brother-in-law so graciously set us up like electrical and sewer and water hookups on his property. So so we're in our home, and it's a sad time to be a performer. It's really tough. Our industry is kind of at a standstill, and there are lots of cancellations coming in, and it's really sad, but, we're healthy and we have our home and we're fostering this great dog. So we're just hanging in there and trying to be grateful.
Right. But it's true. I mean, your industry is one of those big question marks.
Yeah.
Sounds like.
Yeah. I'm hopeful. I'm really hopeful because, opera especially has been around for a very long time. And we have been through, really, really terrible and scary times in history, and opera has come through it. So I know that we will come through this one. But I worry for so many of my colleagues because a lot of people will not be able to afford to wait it out.
Yeah.
So that's the tough thing.
To have a plan B, or that don't have another stream of income.
Right. Or their other stream of income is also based on being around people, like catering or teaching, or, I mean, it's tough. But I do have hope. And musicians are some of the most creative and resourceful people I know. So if there's any industry that's going to like find a way, it's ours. But right now it's sad. It's sad.
So you're supporting friends, colleagues.
Yeah. I actually have 3 people, 3 opera singers who are working part-time for me with my jewelry business.
Okay.
And I feel, I'm I just feel really fortunate. I wish it was full-time. I wish I could offer benefits, but I do feel really fortunate that I have another stream of income, and I'm really happy that I'm in a position to include other musicians in that. And I just and we're just doing what we can.
Yes, exactly. So let's hear all about your jewelry business, your obsession with antique vintage diamonds, and estate jewelry, which is definitely another niche.
So estate jewelry, I'll just break down the terms so everyone knows, because most people don't. Estate jewelry simply just means that it's pre-owned. So anything that is pre-owned is estate. Vintage means it's 20 years or older. And then antique means 100 years or older.
Did not know that.
So everything on my site is estate. Most things are vintage, 20 years or older. And then a good portion of those are 100 years or older, antique. One of the really cool things about vintage and antique jewelry is that most of these pieces, things that were in 1950s and older, use old cut diamonds, which are diamonds that were cut by hand in different cuts than what we find now with modern cuts. So they're really special, and you can't make more of them. They're antique or they're vintage. So
I love it.
So I became obsessed.
And when was this? How long have you been on this kind of dual jewelry and opera path?
I started the business over a year ago. But the obsession, it's pretty new, but the obsession goes back like 10 to 15 years ago.
Yeah.
So it's something that I've always really wanted to do. I just didn't know that I could. I got my first vintage piece for my 16th birthday. My grandparents got me a little Art Deco ring. 16. It's a little 16 was a major year for me.
It was major. It was like
a lot of
futuristic, planting seeds
were planted.
That's cool.
So it had a little old European cut diamond in it, and I took it to a jeweler to get sized. He was like, "Oh, this is an old European cut diamond," and I was just like, "Whoa!" And then I just started researching everything I could, and
that's really cool.
I love vintage. I love history. And I love researching things. So it's like a natural fit.
Very cool. And you go to estate sales, I guess?
My pieces come from many different sources, but yes, most of them are from estates. So these days I don't go to the sales as often as just working through my network of estate coordinators and estate wholesalers. So opera has really been great because I travel so much. I can, form these relationships with people in the industry while I'm on the road. And I've just built this network. So, I used to just go and shop and window shop and hunt for things, pretty much knowing that I couldn't buy most things because I'm just a freelance opera singer. Like I don't have the budget to just buy every beautiful piece of antique jewelry that finds me. And the business kind of took hold because I was like, wait, if I have a business, I can rescue all of these and find them homes.
So do you have to buy them first?
I do. And that was very scary because, it's a huge initial investment. So I think that was the biggest barrier to entry, that for many years I was like, oh gosh, that's a lot of money. Right. But I think that's the thing about starting businesses. It's expensive. So I just did it.
You just started.
I just started.
and so one foot in front of the other.
Yeah.
Right? So did you have the network? Did you have people wanting these pieces from you, or did you just buy it first? Or was this already part of, people knew you were kind of the go-to?
people did not know, and I did not have the network of customers. And that was terrifying, right? Because
it takes a lot of courage.
Beginning, it was like, it did. And, you know, I don't know if it's like courage or just like foolishness.
Both. I mean,
but, but I had a feeling that if I was passionate about it, I would eventually attract other people who were also passionate about it.
Yeah.
And, so I bought like my first like collection. I think I had like 10 pieces. So I had put out quite a bit of money. I mean, we're talking like gold and diamonds and platinum and like, you know, I had invested quite a bit. And I converted my personal Instagram. Maybe I had like 800 followers. I converted that into a business Instagram and I started posting.
So your network.
And it did not work the way I had hoped. Because these were just my friends, you know, these were like my opera singers. These were my, you know, some of them wanted to buy jewelry and some of them did, but like many of them were like, oh, this is no longer content that is relevant to me. Right. So I had to like really seek out my audience.
Did you? So I went through something very similar recently, converting Instagram, and definitely people fall off for sure. And I just, you know, you have to just move forward and realize, well, it is different content. Either they're interested or not. So in your case, did you keep going with it, and then you just built an audience on that same platform?
Yeah, I kept going. And I lost a lot of people, but they obviously weren't the people that I was trying to attract with my, you know, with my new content anyway. And I would allot an hour a day to grow my following and to find the people who were already interested in what I was offering. So I think that was major for me. Like, I think sometimes, you know, we feel like we have to like convince people, but I found no, like the people who are interested in vintage and antique jewelry already exist. I have to find them. It's not worth my energy to convince other people that they should spend $1,000 on jewelry that's not interesting to them. Like, that's not going to happen. Find the people who are already, you know, already looking for that. And there's an amazing Instagram community of vintage jewelry enthusiasts and collectors. So I just had to find them.
So you did. And this was just a year ago that you started.
Yeah, I think maybe it was like a year and a half ago. I feel like time has no no meaning these days.
Not at all.
I've been saying
it's so crazy.
It was a year ago, but like I think another half year has passed and I've still been saying that.
2020 is kind of a bit of a very strange, interesting time. But yes, okay. So you started doing that, and then meanwhile, you're doing both. You're auditioning, you're traveling, you're doing everything.
Yeah.
And did you feel that you were being pulled in were you feeling pulled in either direction, or did it just feel like, you know, you're just doing both? And
doing both is really natural for me. And it's something that I feel like I need. Like I love that duality of my career. And I feel like, I mean, for example, like my happiest that I've ever been was a production of Pagliacci I did in the fall. And Pagliacci is an opera where a woman, my character, is murdered by her jealous husband after he finds out that she's having an affair. People probably know it. It's the clown. He's, you know, smearing the makeup on his face and singing Ridi Pagliaccio. So that's the opera. So I was able to combine every single element of like what I'm passionate about into this one production. So that's when I started working with One Love and doing outreach with area high schools in the area of the opera company to teach them about relationship abuse. So I worked with the opera company and One Love and did the the outreach, I was rehearsing my dream role. And actually
Amazing.
my husband was in the production with me. So that made it just even more amazing that we could
cool.
I could work with my husband and do my dream role and teach about this thing that I was really passionate about. Mm-hmm. And then between rehearsals, I was in a brand new area making connections with antique dealers and estate dealers and sourcing for my site. I mean, it was like
incredible.
Everything I loved all rolled into one.
You manifested it.
I manifested it and it all worked. I feel like one without the other, like, it's not like me as like a complete person.
Mm-hmm.
But something that I did find is that the classical music industry has been a little bit, not with me specifically, but just in general, has always been a little cagey about, the side hustle. And I actually don't like to use the word side hustle anymore because I feel like it's selling myself short. Like, this is just an expansion of my brand. Mm-hmm. But in the classical musical world, there's always been kind of like this attitude of like, well, if you do anything else, you're not as serious about your art.
Okay.
So I always felt like I kind of had to downplay my other businesses or my other areas of interest, so that people would see me as like a serious opera
committed
singer. Committed. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But I think that's changing. And I think that's going to be something positive that will come out of this coronavirus thing because, it's, we are more than just our art. And the other things we do really make us interesting artists.
Definitely, without a doubt. I think so. I'm all about the multi-passionate.
Yeah.
Especially in having dual or three, whether it's a business or not, but just being involved with all these different things. And the word side hustle bothers me too, because it's just the hustle. It doesn't have to be. It has somewhat of a negative connotation, in my opinion.
Yeah. And a lot of people have asked like, oh, well, is it your goal to transition the side hustle into your main hustle and get rid of your main hustle, and I'm like, no, I love them both. Like, they're both a huge part of me. It's not, you don't have to have like a monogamous relationship with your career.
I know. And I wonder, I would say this is a very American thing about one path, choose it, stick to it. I mean, in your case, 16 years old, you're like, this is my path, but it's ingrained in us that we have to stick with one thing, and that it's a negative thing to be interested in multiple things. I mean, because I guess what it shows, or what it is implying, that you just can't commit, and being non-committal,
right?
It's very looked down upon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or that, there's that like saying that I hate, like master or jack of all trades, master of none. And like, I don't think that's true. I can be a master of multiple trades.
Yes.
Thank you.
I love that. Own it. It's true. And if you enjoy both, and again, you're this time now, I mean, everything's completely upside down. So now you're able to employ and help other artists. And so it's all worth it.
Yes.
So in your, let's say if you had a kind of a big goal, is there anything, have you been on Broadway?
No. And I actually, my first teacher was right. Like, I don't have the voice that works for Broadway. I could do some shows. Like, there are certain things that I could do, like things that are more, we call them like legit, like old musical theater. I actually have 2 opera colleagues who were on Phantom on Broadway. So there are certain roles on Broadway that opera singers can do. And there are some opera singers who are amazing crossover artists, so they can kind of switch styles and genres. I am not blessed with that kind of voice that can really do both. So I'm not a belter.
Okay.
I don't have that like pop sound that is pretty popular on Broadway these days. So yeah, I mean, I could do Rodgers and Hammerstein. I could do certain things, but I'm an opera singer. I just, it's what my voice does.
I've seen the videos. It's amazing.
Not that it wouldn't be awesome to be on Broadway. That would be so much fun. And, you know, never say never. Like, you know, if it happened, that would be incredible. And yes, there are opera singers who have made that transition, but that's not a major goal for me. I mean, right now, my goal is to just like get back out there and sing with people. Yeah. I miss that, you know, camaraderie and that feeling of like making music with people. It's incredible. Yeah. It's just the best feeling in the world. And yeah, I think like the major goal for me is to just have a full schedule again, honestly. I mean, it's like just a simple thing of just have a full schedule with amazing colleagues who push me and inspire me.
That's a great goal.
Yeah.
And do you see a lot of the same people? It sounds like you kind of keep running into the same people.
Yeah, that's the great thing about it. It's a really tightly knit community. And, you know, we have friends all over the world. So, you know, if we've spent, I guess it's been like 2 winters in Germany over like the past 3 years. And my husband and I have opera singer friends in Germany and Austria. And, you know, we were in the world and just call up a colleague, you know, and just be like, hey, I'm stuck in your city. You know, can I stay with you? I mean, it's amazing that the network, and it really is like a family feeling.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like. Okay. So I want to hear the love story of you and your husband.
Okay. So my husband and I met on a gig in 2014. I was married to my ex-husband at that point, which was actually a really great way for my current husband and I to start our friendship because it was just simply a friendship. Yeah. So we just like had that basis of truly just being like buddies. And we met on this gig and we figured out that we had a million friends in common. Actually, we learned that my best friend had just gotten engaged to his best friend and none of the friends had met each other. So it was like, you know, just a lot of like paths. Yeah. Small world stuff. And we were just buddies. And, about a year later, I found out that my husband was having an affair, and actually Clay, my husband now, was one of the friends that I felt like I could talk to because he wasn't a part of like our joint friend group. Like he was just my friend. And I felt like he wouldn't judge me. You know, I just felt like he was like a really easy person to talk to and just a really good friend. And he was really, really supportive and, you know, gave me my space to figure out what I wanted to do. And, you know, I fell in love with him very quickly because he just, he's just such a good person. He's the best person that I know. And we had that friendship that like really, you know,
foundation
cemented things. Yeah. So when we first started dating, he was in Germany and I was in California, and then I was in Germany and he was in, you know, who knows. So we were like, you know, other sides of the world. And he really encouraged me to like be single. And like, I had never been single before. I was 28 and I had been dating my ex-husband since I was 16. So he just like really gave me my space, which I keep saying all the time, but like now I just I realized like what an amazing gift that was.
Huge.
For him to let me be on my own and figure out who I was. But he was still there for me, and we would see each other like once a month. And then things just got more serious. And we got married last year.
Amazing. Congratulations.
Yeah. Thank you.
So, such a great love story. And was your ex, was he also a singer?
He was not.
Okay.
So that made things a lot easier because, we're not in the same circles. We aren't in contact anymore. So, it definitely made things less complicated that he wasn't a colleague as well.
Right.
But
and you bought yourself,
go ahead.
and you had then this is the divorce ring kind of phenomenon.
Yes.
Like you bought yourself a ring, and then did you on social media call it a divorce ring?
Yes. Well, yes and no. Okay. So I was on a gig. I was doing the opera William Tell, and I don't think my divorce was finalized at that point, but I was in the process. And obviously I had, stopped wearing my engagement ring and wedding band. And I just like missed having a ring.
Yeah.
Like I just missed wearing diamonds.
You love jewelry.
Not an engagement ring. I love jewelry. I missed that.
Yeah.
And also this was the first time in my entire life that I was absolutely in control of my own finances. I had never had that freedom before. So I found this ring that I loved. It is like Belle Epoque, like Edwardian, platinum with old European cut diamonds, like probably made like 1910, between 1910 and 1920. And it's what's called a dinner ring. So it's like long on the finger. So it doesn't look like an engagement ring per se, though it could be. And I fell in love with it. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to buy it. So I did. So I just bought it, and it was a big purchase. And it was just like so empowering to like make that decision for myself and just like treat myself because I could and I wanted to.
Yeah.
So I wore it to rehearsal, and it was like sparkling under the lights, and my colleagues were like, hold on, what's on your finger there? And I was just like, oh, it's my divorce ring. And I hadn't like thought about it before, but I was like, yeah, that's what it is. It's my divorce ring. And then when I started my jewelry business, a couple years after that, I guess it was like 3 years after that, I shared my story and I shared a picture of my ring, and women started coming forward, wanting to do the same thing. And I think I was really able to offer them a different kind of jewelry buying experience, because so much of the jewelry industry is like engagement, wedding, anniversary. So
definitely not very empowering. I'm imagining it's more pressure on the guy.
Yeah.
To find something, and the woman wanting something perfect. Yeah. I'm not married, so I haven't gone through the process, but I can imagine it's marketed heavily in that way. So this is much more like, what do you want?
Right.
As the woman.
And I find that women are buying jewelry for themselves all the time. Like such a small portion of my business is men buying jewelry. It's generally, women buying jewelry for themselves. Yeah. And also that's like such a heteronormative way of even saying it too. I've worked with same-sex couples and, but right. What I will say is, a small portion of it is people buying jewelry for their partners. It's more often women buying jewelry for themselves.
Okay. Yes.
So that really has changed, but I still think like the messaging and the advertising is just so like relationship focused.
Definitely. And when women are coming to you, what are they attracted to most? Is there anything like, does it look like an engagement ring, for example?
It's really interesting. Most of the divorce rings that I sell do not look like engagement rings.
Okay.
But something that's really interesting is that so many of them didn't have a say in their own engagement ring, or their style has like changed drastically since they got engaged. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So this is like an experience where they can choose whatever they love, regardless of what their partner thinks. I think it's so interesting too that like the engagement ring is like kind of this status symbol for the person who's buying it. So I've talked to a lot of women who are like, I wanted something that was like a little lower profile, kind of modern, maybe a smaller stone, maybe I wanted a sapphire, but my ex-husband or my ex-fiance really wanted something that was like classic and big because it was important for him to show that he could, know? Yeah. So they're just all these...
So many juicy stories that you must hear.
Yeah.
All these people.
And as someone who's been through it, I feel like I'm able to make it like a healing experience.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. And when people find you, do you have something to show them? I mean, you must have a lot of inventory at this point.
I do.
Okay. So you have the inventory, or do some people, or do you source them and just kind of go on the hunt for something?
Sometimes I do. Sometimes people are just like, I saw this ring on your Instagram. It's exactly what I want. Mm-hmm. This is my divorce ring. Or sometimes, they'll say, I've been dreaming of this. Is it something you could find? So I love both. I love hunting for things. Mm-hmm. But I think it's really that, just the symbolism of the purchase and the process of being able to buy something for yourself.
True. And what is the price ranges roughly?
It varies. I would say maybe 500 on the low end to 5,000 on the high end.
Okay.
So yeah, I have worked in many budgets, and it all depends on where you are in your life. I mean, I absolutely recognize that divorce is expensive. So for some people, it's like, well, I'm going through a divorce, so this is what I can afford.
I forgot about that expensive piece of divorce.
Oh, it's so terribly expensive.
Yeah. I have quite a few friends actually that are divorced. I've never been to a divorce party. I'm sure I will. You haven't?
Yeah.
I'm sure we will.
I've never been to one, and I didn't have one. But I felt like my ring was like my own little party that I was throwing for myself.
Yeah. And did they wear it typically on the left hand?
No, usually on the right hand. That's the way I wear mine. Ring finger is my right hand. Generally, any finger that isn't the left hand ring finger. Although there are really no rules. Like you could do whatever you wanted to. But I find that most people right hand ring.
Okay, because they don't want to turn people off, right?
Sure. Yeah. Or maybe you do. Maybe you're like, I'm going to take a break for a moment. So.
I've definitely done that with a friend's wedding ring when we were traveling in Europe. I was like, bunch of creeps.
Please don't bother me.
Yes. And what do you think about, I mean, this is maybe a random question, but the energy of all these, because they're antiques, they've been worn. What do you feel about that? Just like with the, you're into history, but do you know about any of these people? Like any of these?
I unfortunately don't know as much about most of the previous owners as I would like, because by the time they get to me, they've been through like a couple, a couple middlemen. But I believe very strongly in energy. So when I'm sourcing things, like I really feel a pull to certain pieces. And sometimes there are beautiful things that I pass on because the energy just isn't right with me.
I love that you're saying this. Because it's, it is energy, especially these precious gems, would you call them?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
No, I really, really feel that very strongly. And I think some pieces that are so beautiful. And if I thought about them in like a really cut and dry way, I'm like, well, this would be a great return on investment. This is a great piece, but the energy just isn't right. And so it's meant for someone else or someone else's collection. And I pass on it. And another thing I love is like inscriptions or wedding dates inside of certain rings. Like that just makes my heart melt. And I love that. So some things are simple, but like they have these amazing details that no one else knows about that just make them so special.
And then that would be a selling point.
Yeah. Yeah. Or not for some people. You know, I find that like vintage and antique lovers, they love that someone else has like put their mark and their energy on a piece. And then there are some people who are like, I don't want something that someone else has worn.
Oh yeah.
They're obviously not my people. You know, they're obviously not interested in antiques.
Not your people. Yes.
Right? But that was something that was interesting about like finding my clientele, because you can't persuade someone to be interested in that. You know, they have to love it on their own.
It's true. It's like used clothing. A friend was just saying, I hate used clothing. And I love used clothing.
I only wear used clothing.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. So yeah, everyone has their thing. And I always said, if I was to get engaged and have a wedding ring, it would definitely be something that had a bit of a story.
Yeah.
So I'm coming to you for sure.
Oh, please do. It's my favorite thing.
That's so cool. And so I want to hear about the One Love Foundation.
Yes.
A little bit more. Okay. I've never heard of it.
It's an amazing nonprofit. I mean, I can't say enough good things about them. So it was founded in memory of Yardley Love, who was a college student who was murdered by her ex-boyfriend. And her family set up this foundation to teach young people, but really everyone, about what the signs are of unhealthy relationships, how to have healthy relationships, how to identify abuse, you know, in your friends or in your own relationship, or, you know, in movies and TV and pop culture, where so many of these abusive behaviors are normalized, and just really how to name these behaviors so that you know what to do and where to go from there. And I discovered them as I was going through my divorce pretty early on in the process, because my first marriage was really emotionally abusive, but I had never been in another relationship. So I didn't really know how to call it out, like how to describe it. And when I first told my friends and family that I was filing for divorce, so many of them assumed that it was just because of the affair, when in fact the affair was just that one piece that freed me from a relationship that was already really bad for me.
How long? And 16 you were together. When did it start to get bad?
It was unhealthy from the start. But, you know, I mean, it's interesting because we all make mistakes in relationships. You know, we all do things that aren't necessarily healthy, and you learn from those experiences, right? Like ideally, you know, you're in your first relationship, you act like teenagers because you are teenagers. And then, you know, and then someone in the relationship is like, okay, like this isn't going to work for me. I don't want to be treated like this. I'm out. Yeah. But I never did that. You know, I stayed, and it just kind of, got worse and worse, especially once we were married, because you know, our finances were tied up together, and there was that expectation of like, oh, well, you know, in marriage, you stay and you fight it out, or, you know, that like ride or die thing, or marriages take work, you know, and I had nothing to compare it to know like, okay, well, like what is work and what is just not healthy, you know?
Yeah. You had nothing to compare it to.
I had nothing to compare it to. And, you know, I mean, in hindsight, and like, as I get further and further away from it, I do have more compassion for him. And I hope that he has learned from, you know, from what went wrong in our marriage. And I hope that he's a better partner now, you know, maybe he just needed that divorce to make him realize that some things are just not acceptable. You know, but I also realized that it was not my job to teach him that. And, I think during the relationship, I always just felt like, okay, like I don't like the way I'm being treated. This isn't good. But if I just try harder and like love him more and, you know, try and make things better for him, I can change him. And you can't change people. It's just, it's not your job. It's not only not your job, but it's not, you do not have the power to do that.
Yeah. I've thought that many times as well, you know, because you think I'm different, maybe that you can, that you'll somehow change them. And I've thought that many times. I'm like trying to embarrassingly think of all the times like, no, this time will be different, but I think it comes from a place too of loving, you know, that you really want this person to do better and be better. And especially knowing each other since you guys were teenagers, that's a long history.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, you know, what One Love really illuminated for me is that so many of these unhealthy behaviors are so normalized in pop culture. I mean, not even pop culture, like, you know, just literature and movies and operas and books. I mean, you know, like all of it. They're so normalized.
Could you throw out a couple examples?
Yes. Okay. So like one example is like that tumultuous relationship that's full of passion where you're fighting and you're like screaming and yelling and throwing things. And then you both like collapse in tears and apologize. And then there's this big, like, you know, display of like flowers or gifts or like, I'm going to be better. You make me a better person. And, you know, that like really highs and lows of like passion, you know?
I thought you were going to say like makeup sex.
Or makeup sex, you know what I mean? But no, that really plays into it, like those highs and lows. And we are conditioned to believe that like that's passion and that's love. Like, I mean, you know, movies like The Notebook or, you know, like all of those things that are just so dramatic and passionate are really not good examples of healthy relationships.
Very, very true. Yes.
Yeah. Or, you know, the idea of like a man who's pursuing a woman and like she's not interested, but like he keeps pursuing her and like wears her down until she falls in love with him. Like, that's not healthy. You know, it's not healthy for either partner, you know? And as we, you know, as we talk more about like, you know, the Me Too movement and consent, you know, like that's that unrequited love that is like built up to be so romantic is actually like really, like defying someone's consent. Like that's someone who's saying, I'm not interested. And then you keep pursuing them. Like that's not a good foundation for a relationship. And I mean, it's not healthy for either partner. You know, you shouldn't be pouring energy into someone who's clearly not giving you that energy back in return.
Yeah. I mean, I'm going to generalize, but a lot of women do that, seems like. Giving attention to the guy that just isn't giving them enough attention. So I think that there is definitely a trend in that way, and seeing it in movies, and you're right, it's all over our culture.
Right.
For
so
sure.
Just like being able to name that, and that doesn't mean that I don't still enjoy those movies, you know, but when I watch them, I'm like, okay, like if I were a parent or if I were a teacher, I would use these tools to be like, okay, this is what we're seeing. This is what's happening. You know, if this were happening in your life, how would you handle this?
I like that it's not, I mean, we know physical abuse is completely wrong and not okay. So it sounds like this organization is showing all the cultural examples that we're seeing all the time, again, in media. So it's bringing attention, these very normalized dynamics.
Yeah. And I think that's really, really major, because of course I knew, like, if someone hits you, that's abuse and you leave, right? But I was never hit. So it was really easy for me to kind of talk myself out of, you know, like I knew in my heart that that the way I was being treated wasn't right. But I was reticent to call it abuse because it didn't fit into that, like, you know, battered wife idea of like what I thought abuse was. And emotional abuse is really, really harmful. Oftentimes it's a precursor to physical abuse, but even if it's not, it's really, really harmful.
And so are you working in this organization? Is it for both male, female?
It's a really inclusive organization. And what they do is they just train educational facilitators to go into schools or talk to their work or talk to their students or whatever. So they are just training people to get out into the world and share this information. So, so when I did it, I actually wrote to One Love and asked if I could slightly modify their curriculum so that I could incorporate the opera into it.
Awesome.
But yeah, that was
Very
really cool for me.
They're like, absolutely.
But they were so supportive. And I made sure that, you know, I double checked everything I was saying to make sure that it like was really in alignment with what their curriculum is. And then I used the base curriculum of the 10 unhealthy and 10 healthy relationship behaviors. And it was just so rewarding. Especially because I got into my relationship in high school. So to talk to these high school students, like, I honestly felt like it was like talking to my past self.
Did you? And you told them about your story?
I did.
Yeah.
And it was the first time I had talked about it in like, you know, 4 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
Very, very cool. And that's part of your healing journey, I'm sure.
Absolutely. It was hard too. I mean, I remember after the first talk, I like just sat in my car and I just sobbed because, you know, it's like you kind of unearth a lot of stuff. And then there's that feeling of responsibility. Like, I just hope that these students like understand what I'm saying and don't make the same mistakes that I make. Like, I want to, you know, I want to save them all. But again, that's also that old thinking of like, you can't change the way other people behave. You can only change the way you behave. Right.
But you sharing your story is going to change and help somebody. I'm sure it already has.
Yeah, I hope so.
You know? And you're sharing, you know,
I just
here.
Yeah. And I just think like, if anyone, you know, just has this feeling, because you have a feeling like in the pit of your stomach that something is not right.
Yeah.
Just reading those 10 unhealthy relationship behaviors and being able to put a name to what you're experiencing is so powerful, because, you know, it's just permission to tell yourself, okay, like, this, I don't deserve this. This isn't right. Like, I deserve better.
Absolutely. And will you continue to work with them? And now?
Yes, I would love to.
Okay. So I
would love to. Yeah. And I think that there's so many things that, that the opera world can do. So many of the operas that we do portray these kinds of relationships. So I think that it's just it's a prime opportunity to use these bad examples as teaching tools. So I think that
brilliant.
there's, I strongly believe that we should be performing these operas. I don't believe that we should scrub the repertory of bad behavior, because I think when we see these things acted out and we have materials and tools that are explaining what's happening, it helps us kind of synthesize what's going on in our own lives and make sense of it through art. So I think it's very, very important that we keep doing these works of art that make us uncomfortable and make us squirm. We just need to accompany them with resources and tools.
Yes. And this is a dumb question. But
no dumb questions.
I've only seen Phantom of the Opera. And so most of the things that you're performing are in Italian?
No. Okay. So many in Italian, but operas, the big three are Italian, French, and German. But there are operas in Russian, there are operas in English, there are operas in Czech, Spanish. I mean, it's, endless languages. But the major three are Italian, French, and German.
Okay. And when are they written, most of them that you're performing? How far are they going back?
Pretty far back. But there are also operas that are being written today. So, operas that are 200 years old, operas that are 2 years old. It really, it's a living, breathing art form.
Amazing. Okay. I could talk to you forever. And I really want to know how you do that.
Oh, my little hair scarf.
The hair scarf is amazing.
Yes. So I've been really into vintage hairstyles. It's raining today. So I just watched a very cool YouTube video on vintage hairstyles for when it's raining. So this is a square scarf. I folded it into a triangle. And then you fold the point of the triangle down a couple times so that it's still pretty thick. And then you just put the flat part against the back of your head, tie it in the front, and tuck the little ends into the front. Cute. So it's like little 1940s.
I love it.
Cover up my quarantine gray hairs.
Oh, yeah. I know. I've never wanted to dye my hair so badly.
I know.
Being in quarantine. Okay. So how can people find you? So for the jewelry.
Yes.
On Instagram.
The best place to follow me is on Instagram. I am on Instagram all day, every day. So that is at Songbird Sara Jewelry. And from there, you can access my website, songbirdsaraantiquejewelry.com. You can also find videos of my singing and fun opera tidbits. So Instagram is kind of my home online.
Okay.
Yes. And then if you want to just get strict opera, saraduchovnay.com is my opera website.
It's beautiful.
Thank you.
Yeah. All the outfits and the makeup. I thought, wow. You transformed.
Yes. It's definitely not my quarantine. It's definitely my quarantine chic. But that's such a big part of what I love about it. Just the history and the costumes and the glamour. And it really, it ties back into the jewelry. So.
It does. Amazing. You have such an incredible story. I'm so grateful that
Thank you
shared it with myself and my listeners. And I will check you out on Instagram for sure.
Thank you. It was an honor. This was so fun.
It's so fun. And yes, I'll be following your RV journey as well.
Yes.
Do you post that on Instagram?
Not quite so often, but I have to find a way to work it in there. It's a little, it's unexpected. It's unexpected.
It is. I think it adds to just the adventure too of going to these different locations, sourcing jewelry, meeting the people, the whole thing.
Absolutely.
So cool. Thank you again. And I'll put your info in the show notes so people can find you.
Sounds great.
Awesome. That brings us to the end of this episode. Thank you so much for being here. If you enjoy the show, please rate and review on Apple Podcasts. It makes a big difference for visibility. And even better, share this episode with a friend. And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode every other Wednesday. If you're interested in working together to elevate your online presence, I'd love to hear from you. Reach out to me on Instagram at whereiswillow. I also hang out on LinkedIn, Willow McDonough. Until then, cheers to carving your own fucking path. I love you.